Good evening, friends, and welcome to the Sackcloth and Ashes News Report. I'm your host, Gwendolen Song. This is the news this evening, and it sure is a doozy. I mean, while Ukraine and Russia, they duke it out in the European theater, we get a shocking surprise attack on a North Carolina power grid. Now, could this attack be related to that very provocative speech given by our own Secretary of State a week ago in Bucharest, Hungary? Anthony Blinken, while at the G7 summit in Bucharest, he stood on the global stage and continuously poked at Vladimir Putin and his integrity as a world and military leader. Now, people really need to wake up and see the reality that we are in a proxy war against Russia, and to expect nothing in return on our own soil is pure foolishness. And it is possible that our enemies could send us a December surprise. Now, was this power grid shooting their idea of a stocking stuffer? Perhaps the North Carolina power grid attack was a preamble to war on our own soil. Authorities say that the shooter or shooters knew exactly what they were doing, and there are many reported Russian and Chinese operatives here on U.S. soil. Perhaps there is an actual gag order from the U.S. military on the truth behind the scenes of this power grid attack. Now, I want to read to you, I spent a lot of time on this afternoon. This is what Anthony Blinken said in Bucharest about a week ago. It was on November 30th at the G7 summit meeting. He stated, "We're meeting at a critical juncture. As Ukraine continues to seize momentum on the battlefield, President Putin has focused his ire and fire on Ukraine's civilian population. Over the past several weeks, Russia has bombed out more than a third of Ukraine's energy system, plunging millions into cold, into darkness as frigid temperatures set in. Heat, water, electricity for children, for the elderly, for the sick, these are President Putin's new targets. He's hitting them hard. This brutalization of Ukraine's people is barbaric. We are clear-eyed about the difficult winter that lies ahead. And we know President Putin's playbook: freeze and starve Ukrainians, force them out of their homes, drive up energy, food, and other household costs, not only across Europe, but across the world. And then they try to splinter our coalition. President Putin thinks that if he can just raise the price high enough, the world will abandon Ukraine and that we will leave them to defend for themselves. His strategy, he says, will not, and it says it has not, and it will not work. And we will continue to prove him wrong. And then, friends, in another portion of Anthony Blinken's speech, and pay attention to the words energy grid and power and infrastructure, and see how this was the same sort of attack that we had here in the USA. When Russia began to accelerate its attacks against Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, the G7 foreign ministers acted swiftly and acted together. We agreed to create a new coordination group to synchronize our defense of Ukraine's energy grid, just as the Ramsteins process had coordinated our provision of the weapons that Ukraine needs to defend its territory. When we convened that group here yesterday, here in Bucharest, I announced that the U.S. will commit over $53 million to send equipment to help stabilize Ukraine's energy grid and keep Ukraine's power grid electricity up and running. So you see, friends, well, those are some of the excerpts from our Secretary of State's speech, and there is a lot of info to glean from that speech. So no matter what side you're on in this war, or if you're like me and you're just praying for humanity in general, you can't ignore these massive payouts from the U.S. government to Ukraine. And we are throwing so much money at Ukraine. And where will we get the funds to help strengthen our own infrastructure when their bombs start falling on our soil? And those days have been prophesied by hundreds of people all over the globe. The day that the bear and the dragon come to the U.S. soil. And just like that old Karen Carpenter song, we've only just begun. See, this war has only just begun here on U.S. soil. So keep looking up to the Lord Jesus Christ, friends. The enemy is positioned on our soil right now, and he has infiltrated almost every sector of our own government. And don't sit by idly and think that every Christmas will be bright. They are dropping dark winter references left and right. I really wonder what that means for us. And these globalists are not simply referring to Europe. Even our own president has dropped dark winter references in his speeches. So we really need to be prayerful and wake up. Now, in this next article, Ukraine leader defiant as drone strikes hit Russia again. Drones struck inside of Russia's border with Ukraine Tuesday in the second day of attacks, exposing the vulnerability of some of Moscow's most important military sites, observers said. Ukrainian officials did not formally confirm carrying out drone strikes against Russia, and they have maintained ambiguity over previous high-profile attacks. Kremlin spokesperson Peskov said that Russian authorities will take the necessary measures to enhance protection of key facilities. So what actually happened? A fire broke out at an airport in Russia's southern Kursk region that borders Ukraine after a drone hit the facility, the region's governor said Tuesday. And in a second incident, an industrial plant 80 kilometers from the Ukrainian border was also targeted by drones, which missed a fuel depot at the site, Russian independent media reported. Now, meanwhile, we have our own Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, in promising more and more and more U.S. funds for a war effort, drawing lines in the sand with NATO's enemies, promising more and more equipment. And I just wonder, friends, when will our coffers run dry? Now, in this next article, restoring power after shootings could take until Thursday. This is from Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a family member who lives in that area. Very concerning. Power should be restored by Thursday morning to thousands of homes in central North Carolina County that have been without electricity for several days after an attack on the electric grid. Governor Roy Cooper said Tuesday. I hope it's earlier, he said. I mean, people are really hurting. Now, Duke Energy said crews were making progress on restoring power to Moore County, where authorities said one or more people shot up 2 substations where the repairs won't be complete until later in the week. Officials have said the damage requires sophisticated repairs and delivery of equipment from outside of the area. This seems to be a very big challenge, doesn't it, friends? Nearly 36,000 customers were without power in the county Tuesday, down from a peak of about 45,000. In the short term, the state has sent generators to Moore County and is helping feed residents. Now, law enforcement in surrounding counties has been more vigilant about monitoring nearby substations since the attack. This seemed to be too easy, Cooper said after the meeting. People knew what they were doing to disable that substation and for that much damage to be causing so much problem. Economic loss, safety challenges to so many people for so long. I think that we have to look at what we might need to do to harden that infrastructure. This is a quote from Mike Causey, the North Carolina Insurance Commissioner and State Fire Marshal. And he called the attack a wake-up call to provide better security at our power substations. So are all these stories, are they all related, friends? Is there anything possible that these could be related? You know, at this point, we need to be prepared for anything. And by the way, tomorrow is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor surprise attack. So I really ask you to stay in prayer as the people of God, and let's be repentant and humble before the Lord Jesus Christ. These stories are very concerning, and it is probable that these dots are being connected militarily behind the scenes. All right, friends, well, I'll talk to you again real soon. Good night.